Hey guys, it's Michael again. Let's have a chat about The Last Man on Earth.
So I was bored one day.
Well, not one day. We're in a pandemic, so I'm bored all the time. But this specific day,
I wanted to watch a show on Hulu that I was already in the middle of binging, but my eye managed to catch an extremely familiar looking hairy man standing next to what looked like Kristen's skull. Oh my god!
I thought.
The Last Man on Earth, I remember that show! That's the show I watched years ago that I enjoyed and that got canceled before it can wrap up one of the biggest cliffhangers I have ever witnessed in my entire life.
I gotta watch it again.
For those of you who don't know, The Last Man on Earth is a show that came out in 2015. It's about a man named Phil Miller discovering that he is the one and only Phil Miller still alive on the planet Earth.
And also that he's the one and only anything left on planet Earth. Because everyone's dead.
This is because a worldwide deadly virus broke out and he seems to be the only one that's immune.
Wait. What year does this show take place? We did. I'm sorry if you haven't watched the show before. I'm gonna make a couple of show-related jokes just like that in this episode. But yeah, what are the odds that the writers of this show somehow managed to predict a friggin' pandemic breaking out in 2020? I mean, I know it happens in 2019, the pandemic in the show, and by 2020 it wipes everybody out and there's nobody left on planet Earth, but still, that's pretty nuts. And I think because of that and the fact that, well, people are stuck at home so they have a lot more time now to like watch shows that they haven't watched before, somehow made this show more relevant because this show is being talked about a lot more now. And I'm glad because it deserves the attention.
I watched The Last Man on Earth back when it was first starting to come out and there was like advertisements everywhere for it. I was really interested in what they were going to do with the concept of an end of the world comedy. I watched it with one of my siblings and we both enjoyed it quite a bit. And from what I remember, this show was not well received. I don't know if by critics, I don't know if by audiences. I just knew that I never ran into another person in my life that said, I like The Last Man on Earth. And you know what? I completely understood why. I didn't think this show was for everyone.
But now, things have changed. Everything's flipped around. It's like 5 years later and all of a sudden critics are actually giving it good scores. People are actually talking about it. Oh my god, this show is actually really funny. Where the hell did that come from? Did I miss something? Am I losing my mind? But after watching it another time, I think I get it. I think I know why people didn't like it back then and are starting to enjoy it now. If you've ever watched The Last Man on Earth before, let me tell you more or less whether you're the person that will enjoy this type of show or not. If you're expecting a show that cleverly uses its premise and touches on every aspect of living in an apocalypse-style setting in an intelligent and well-thought-out manner, well, you're not gonna like this show very much. And if you're the person that doesn't care too much about realism and comedy and can sit through a few dumb jokes, heck, maybe even prefer dumb jokes, I would recommend giving this show a shot. With that being said, this segment of the video will be mostly spoiler-free. Spoiler, I hardly knew her. Boom, still got it. And then afterwards, we'll jump into full-on spoiler territory. So if you don't mind little teensy, little weensy, little tiny spoilers, then stay tuned.
Okay, so the concept of the show is pretty straightforward. The main protagonist, Phil Miller, drives all across the US in search of any other survivors, and at the same time leaving a bunch of signs around alerting others that he's alive in his hometown Tucson. He spends years being by himself before the crippling loneliness starts to get to him, and he decides to drive his truck into a rock to end himself. But he stops himself as soon as he discovers the last woman on Earth, Carol Pilbagian. They spend time together and eventually find that they can't stand each other because Phil thinks Carol is an over-controlling, grammar-correcting pest, which she is, and Carol thinks that Phil is an untruthful, repulsive slug, which he is. After a while, Carol decides that they should repopulate, but doesn't want to have bastard children.
Ugh.
So they get married, and after a while, they drive into a limousine, and oh my god, is that another survivor I see? Yeah, you get the idea. From here on, they keep discovering more and more survivors who become staples in the show, and so on and so forth.
But yeah, if you haven't watched the show before and that sounds interesting to you, please go and check it out. If this didn't interest you in any way, please go ahead and skip to this point in the video, just so that I can at least clear something up for you. Okay, and for all my fellow Last Man on Earth lovers out there, let's take a recap of all 4 seasons as we look over the...
So the new survivors, including Melissa Shart, Todd Rodriguez, Erica Dundee, Gail Klosterman, and Phil Miller 2.0, get enough of the original Phil Miller, now named Tandy because that's his middle name, and Phil Miller 2.0 is much more
desirable.
and they kick him out of Tucson. Carol still has a soft spot for him though, and so she decides to travel the country at his side. Now in season 2, we follow Tandy and Carol as they go house hunting in different locations. Carol wants to return to Tucson to be with the other group, but Tandy is afraid to go back because of what they might do to him. But Tandy is a better man than before, and he tries to prove it to Carol by going back with her to see the old gang who have moved to Malibu. Meanwhile, up in space, we find Michael Miller, who is Tandy's older brother. We'll get back to him later. So Tandy and Carol meet with the gang again, and after a while of making Tandy pay for his crimes in several hilariously cruel ways, they decide to let him be part of the group again. Erica gets pregnant with Phil 2.0's baby, and Phil 2.0 eventually dies from appendicitis. Mike Miller crashes down to Earth and meets Pat Brown, who is a crazy person Mike eventually runs away from and then finds his way back to Tandy and the gang. After some time, Carol gets pregnant with Tandy's baby, and Mike seems to be infected with the virus, and the group decides to kick him out. The group seems to be in peril when they notice people in hazmat suits and rifles heading towards them. And now we jump into season 3. We find that the hazmat gang was only joking around.
Hilarious.
And we meet Lewis, and re-meet Pat Brown, who eventually outs himself as being a crazy person. The group, now joined by Lewis, run away from Pat and find refuge in a very conveniently well-sustained building, where Lewis dies in a plane crash and Melissa starts to go cuckoo bananas because she's deprived of her Santa penis medication. Erica gives birth to her baby, and where they discover a nuclear facility meltdown. After that, they decide to move somewhere else where there might not be any nuclear plants. They decide Mexico is appropriate and try and grab a boat to make their way there. But they run into Pat again, who now has a lust for vengeance, but is immediately killed by Pamela Brown, who had been watching the group in previous episodes via a drone. The group takes her with them, and sure enough, they start to regret that decision when she strands them on a deserted island because the group doesn't like her. In the island, they meet Glenn, who has been stranded on the island even before the virus broke out. Tandy, whom Pamela had forcefully taken with her, gets back to the group, and they with Glenn start to drive to Mexico again. When they arrive, the main group separates from Glenn and Pamela, who fall in love with each other, and
oh my god, I can't even remember what those two did.
So the group go to Zihuatanejo, where Carol gives birth to twins unexpectedly, and Todd starts to have a craving for his own baby. That sounded weird. I made it sound like he wants to eat the babies. No, I just meant that he really wants to have his own baby. So Carol gets pregnant again, but he doesn't want that baby, he wants Erica's baby. The group, while trying to find Jasper...
Oh my god, I forgot about Jasper. Holy crap. Okay, so Jasper is this kid that they found at the well-sustained building that they were staying in for a while. He's just some kid, he didn't talk that much, and he talks a bit later, whatever.
Anyways, while trying to find him, they run into Carl, who was stuck in a prison. We later find out that he's a cannibal who actually was locked up in prison. They end up killing him, or rather he ends up killing himself in actually a really funny scene. Then Mike Miller joins the group again, and it turns out he just had a weakened immune system from being in space and now has recovered. He now has a van that detects heat signatures, and he actually finds a really big heat signature at one point. We find out later that it was actually an underground society of people. The group, after finding out that the house they chose to live in is filled with dangerous explosives and dead bodies, decide to move to Cancun, but they stop at Tapachula. This is the place Tandy realizes would be the best and most ideal place to live. Mike separates from the group yet again in search for his own family. Then the group encounters the society of people from the underground bunker surrounding them in gas masks.
Hey, wait a minute, what happened? What happens next? Come on, let's see the next episode.
That's it.
What?
The show was canceled after that.
Oh, what a tease! I mean, it looked like we were really getting into some interesting world-building plot points, so I got devastated once I heard that this show was getting canceled before it could wrap up the series.
Though I have read that Will Forte mentioned that he didn't really confidently have a way that they planned on ending it.
So I guess maybe it's good that they just wrapped it up there, or that it just ended there. I don't know. I don't know. I really like this show.
But anyways, while I obviously left a couple minor story moments out of the recap, I really found this show enjoyable to watch, and most of the situations that the characters get put through are so funny.
And speaking of which, let's jump right into talking individually about every single one of the...
Phil Tandy Miller is the stupidest and most unlikable character in season 1. I mean, seriously, I don't understand half the stuff he does sometimes. He makes literally the worst possible decisions in nearly every situation. I guess the idea they had was to have his character be so unlikable that we accepted when bad things happen to him in the show, which it does, and I mean like all the damn time. He's not completely irredeemable. He does have his moments where he shows how much of a caring person he could be. Like when he spends all day spiting Carol and her plans to make a garden. He's very rude and dismissive about it at first, but later when Carol throws in the towel, he feels bad and decides to go out of his way to make a watering system to water her plants for her. Or when he considers stranding Todd in the middle of nowhere to die but doesn't have it in his heart to go through with it. These are some kind of nice moments that give his character a little more likability. But he has those moments in little spurts, and they aren't enough to redeem him for some of the really horrible things he does in later episodes. I mean, he seriously deserved to be kicked out of the group, 100%. I believe this is what anybody in their right mind would do to someone that acts the way Tandy does.
But that's just in season 1. In season 2 onward, they do a really good job of kind of keeping his character the same and slowly starting to change him from an unlikable idiot to a lovable idiot.
He'll still have his ridiculous moments from time to time where he acts a little bit pricky, but the difference is that he knows he's being pricky at points, and he knows he's being a bad person, but he legitimately wants to change for the better. And I would say by season 3, he becomes a really likable character. His love for Carol is just so adorable and oddly kind of believable. And his interaction with the rest of the group who thinks he's a complete idiot at times is freaking hilarious. He has the best running gags in the show, like the freaking guitar gag literally kills me every time I watch it. And this one scene, although kind of dumb, literally had me on the floor laughing.
Now, I've chosen the Broadway smash Hamilton. And obviously, I'll be Alexander Hamilton, and you'll be Aaron Berg. Berg, you need a sweater?
I'm fine.
Overall, he's just had a rough start, but the writers really ended up finding out how to make his character work. Carol Pilbagian. I mean, you know Christian Scow. If you know what she does, she basically does the same here. She kinda has a rocky start in season 1 as well. They have this whole gag where she incorrectly corrects other people's grammar all the time.
What do you need that gun out for?
Don't you mean out for what do you need that gun?
Okay, that can't be right.
And she constantly always over-controls situations, like when she complains that Tandy doesn't stop for stop signs in a world where stop signs wouldn't even serve a purpose anymore. And yeah, it gets annoying very quickly. But apart from being given every possible unattractive trait for comedic purposes, she still has that little bit of charm that at least I see from most of Kristen Scow's performances. Her whole being weird gag carries on, which is fine because it gives her more character. And they smartly drop the whole grammar and over-controlling jokes pretty early on, and it comes back very rarely. Her chemistry with Tandy to me is oddly enough one I genuinely buy and find very believable and adorable, and God, I love seeing these two. The scene where she's getting busy are sometimes kind of uncomfortable, but also at some points actually kind of funny. She'll have her moments in later seasons where she makes a big deal out of something so minor.
Like when Erica has a bigger pregnancy bump than she does, they spend the whole episode having to resolve it when really, come on, that's like a 2-minute conversation and we're done.
But I can tell it's mostly just to have subplots to cut to while the episode's main plot is happening. But it doesn't completely ruin her character for me. Melissa Poop. I mean crap. I mean purposely funny last name. I mean... Shut. Okay, so this one's a little bit mixed in my mind. I wasn't really sure whether I liked her or not because for most of season 1, she's really just this cute girl for Tandy to get all antsy for. But then they very wisely make her the character that constantly realizes when Tandy is being an absolute turd and calls him out for it in various points. And I really love her and Todd's whole relationship. I'll touch more on that in a bit. They flesh her out as more of a kinda badass, don't take nothing from no one / understanding and caring character later on. And there's a point in later seasons where she's like off her meds and she starts completely going roast city on everybody in the group, especially to Todd. There were a couple of funny moments they were able to pull with this bit before it completely came to a close, and I'm glad it did because I like normal Melissa a lot more. Psychopathic Melissa just freaks me out. There's also some nice scenes with Jasper that I think really should have had a little more focus and time spent on. And also, I wasn't really a big fan of how she would interact with Erica at the point where Erica was agreeing to have Todd's baby. It just felt very weird and awkward. It's like not something I picture her really doing. It felt kind of out of character. But other than that, she's alright. Not one of my favorites, but she's still a really good character nonetheless. Todd Rodriguez. Oh my god, Todd is such a nice guy. He's so cute. I just want to give him a big hug sometimes. His romance with Melissa is so perfect and so incredibly adorable. Well, at least in the beginning. Later it turns into like a whole like role-playing thing, and I mean, damn, I don't judge. It's kinda hot. He, like all the others, becomes a bit more polished as a character in the later seasons. He was treated as the main source for fat jokes mostly in the beginning, but it stops after a while and he's just kind of this lovable guy whom isn't completely flawless. He'll have his moments from time to time where he isn't too nice, but it doesn't tarnish his image for me. I love the points where he kind of just goes on little mini adventures with Tandy. In fact, I really love the friendship that they both have. Todd is actually one of the only other ones in the group that, apart from Carol, is willing to put up with Tandy's nonsense. Even early on, when Tandy is just a complete a-hole and he doesn't deserve Todd's praise at all, he still is just such a great guy. My favorite season 1 scene including Todd is when Tandy and him go miles from camp to quote-unquote check out Tandy's thinking place when really Tandy was just going to strand him in the middle of nowhere. And even though it doesn't seem like much of a great thinking spot, he respects Tandy and enjoys the spot for a little before they drive back home.
Give me a minute.
Oh my god, Todd, I just want to kiss that big old beautiful face of yours sometime. I want to suck that mustache. He also has a really funny bit with his therapeutic poppin' locking, and wow, he can really break it down, man. I guess the only nitpick I kinda have is this whole scene with him going into like a mental breakdown where he obsesses over train sets because Erica doesn't want to have a baby with him at first. I don't know, it's just, I don't really get the joke. I mean, why trains? Of all things, why trains? I don't get it. It's just, I don't know. It's just something I didn't really get. It's not really a complaint. It's just a nitpick, like I said. He's a great, lovable, and fun character overall. Erica Dundee, the Australian character. Yeah, I mean, that's all she had going for her for a while, but say it with me, she ends up being more interesting later on. She's a very sweet person. She's really cute, and honestly, I'm kind of upset that Mike and her didn't become a thing. They were like so perfect for each other in my opinion. But I think that her relationship with Gail is actually just as, if not even more perfect. It kind of seems like she's got very little to contribute to the group sometimes. She doesn't have that many memorable moments apart from being the first one in the group to get pregnant and give birth. And her baby is literally the most adorable thing I've ever seen in my life. Anyways, she had a relationship with Phil Miller 2.0 that I honestly didn't really see enough of on camera to fully believe. So when they split, I really didn't care that much at all, but we'll talk more about that later.
Erica's fine. There's not much to talk about here. Let's move on.
Gail Klosterman is my absolute favorite character. She's so freaking interesting, and she's given some of the best gags in the show in my opinion. She's got the whole obsession with the wine, she's got the accordion, she's got the whole LGBTQ representation. She's one of the only characters that can actually get a laugh out of me. She's actually the most useful one in the group as well. She can cook, she's medically trained, kinda. The whole plot with her being stuck in the elevator honestly had me glued to my seat. I genuinely wanted to see her get out okay. And her and Todd have a few episodes. Not gonna lie, I thought it was weird, but at least it's somewhat short-lived. I like the episodes where Carol tries to get her to become her legal mother and constantly tries to get her to do family-related traditions like the whole family photo thing. And I also love the episode where she starts to show some appreciation for Tandy and they start to become closer with each other until Tandy reads it as her wanting to get down and dirty with him. She stays pretty much the same interesting person from the beginning to the end of the whole series.
I just love her old ass.
Phil Miller 2.0. I mean, he's literally painted to be perfect in almost every way. He just comes in and he literally knows how to do literally everything. He does kind of show a bit of a scummy side in later seasons, which I guess gives him a little more character, just a little. I honestly didn't really picture him as a long mainstay character. I didn't feel too bad when he died off, and I honestly really didn't get why he literally was so obsessed with Carol that he would go out of his way to break up with Erica and try to convince her to leave the group and run off with him.
Don't you dare get in the way of Tandy and Carol, you pest!
He kind of had a bit of a nice moment when he helped Erica see her baby, and I will admit I actually kind of felt bad when Erica and Gail did not allow him to be a part of his baby's life. But he just really wasn't the type of character I pictured being a genuine part of the group. At least he had a pretty funny scene when he was doing it with Carol.
Put the food in the bear box.
The food's in the box, baby.
Get those mosquitoes away, Phil.
Can't stand those damn mosquitoes.
Remember when I said Gail was my favorite character?
Well, I lied, because the best character in this show is Mike Miller, baby!
Holy Christacles, I love Mike so goddamn much. He brings a whole lot to this show. His pranks on Tandy are beyond hilarious. The way he interacts with almost anyone is just so charming. And he has the whole subplot of being in space and also his relationship with his brother Tandy. I just enjoy watching him every moment he's on screen. I love when he sings Falling Slowly with Tandy. I love the kind of short-lived chemistry between him and Erica. And oh my god, literally the funniest scene in the entire show in my opinion is when Tandy and Carol are trying to have a baby, but it looks like Tandy is sterile. So they have Mike help out by having him bonk with Carol. And the scene where they're in full body sex clothes and Tandy is there watching while they do their whole descriptive scenarios about having a picnic.
Okay, I guess I'm opening up the picnic basket.
Yes, Mike. What did you bring?
Potato salad.
No, because you know I have a bad potato allergy.
You got frickin' potato allergy, dude. It's like he's never had sex before.
Oh no, Carol!
Oh!
I just knocked over the baked beans.
No, you did not!
I can literally watch that scene forever and never get tired of it.
And as most of you know, they supposedly killed Mike off when he seemed to be sick with the virus and he leaves back to his hometown and he has to keep away from the group. We don't see him again for quite some time until he freaking comes back midway into season 4. And you just know they did this because they knew how much everyone loved his character. And hey, I'm not complaining. He really does bring a lot to the show when he comes back, and he's still the best character in the show, even though he's only a reoccurring one. I did honestly kind of find it weird that he wanted to leave the group so bad to start his own family because he wants what Tandy has now. I really thought he was deserving of being one of the main characters in the show, even though we really wouldn't have been able to see that much of him anyways because the show got canceled. But still, I'm okay with what they ended up doing with him in the end.
Okay, now that we talked about mostly everyone in the show, I wanted to skip any reoccurring characters just for the sake of the length of this video. Let's go ahead and wrap this video up by talking about...
Okay, so I honestly think one of the biggest reasons not many people watch this show is because of how unlikable Tandy was as a character. And I even think people might have complaints about Carol too. I think that some people watched either the first couple of episodes or watched the whole first season and decided that, this really isn't for me. And they weren't able to see some of the moments that makes this show so enjoyable because they didn't bother to continue it. Only people like me who legitimately love this show and its characters actually waited and stuck around to watch every new episode of every new season that came out afterwards. And it's not uncommon for a show to start off weak and only after a while start to get really interesting. From what I've heard, Game of Thrones has like the exact same problem. But I am legitimately glad that this show seems to be getting more recognition because it's extremely underrated and totally deserves more praise. And I guess at this point it'd probably be ideal to talk to the people who wanted to avoid spoilers. Hello, welcome back. So I just want you to understand one thing about this show. The show's season 1 is fine, but the show gets way better later on in terms of character and in terms of comedy. If you're considering watching this show, I would recommend sticking with it all the way, because the first season does kind of have a bit of an issue in that its protagonist is literally kind of a dickwad most of the time, but you'll end up liking him a lot more in later seasons, believe me. And yeah, they unfortunately never gave the show a proper ending, and I honestly think that if they did end it, it probably wouldn't have been a good ending anyways.
But regardless, The Last Man on Earth is a brilliant show, and I would really like it if you guys let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of it. But before I let you go, I did actually write a song in memory of the show, and how good it was till it lasted. And I'm gonna go ahead and finish off the episode here by playing it for you guys. Give me a second, actually, to tune really quick. Have you ever had a TV show made by Fox sitting right on your face? And then you realize that the TV show got canceled and you start to rage all over the place. This one's for all of you that feel the same way. Let's all get together and cry a little. Cause we really love the show, what the hell, Fox? We ought to sign a petition to bring this show back. Closure, 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 closure. Last Man on Earth was a good show, please bring it back. Closure, 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 closure. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Fart, fart, fart.